Okay, so one of the things we have to work with here is looking at what needs we have in retirement. And that is basically looking at your current living expenses. So what is it that's going to continue and what is it that's going to change? Now, you've learned a lot in this class. You know there's always going to be expenses. There's always going to be living expenses. And so even if you own your house as an older person because you have no mortgage, you're still going to be paying taxes on that property. You're still going to be paying insurance on that property. You'll still be paying for maintenance and repairs and other things on that property if you own it. If you have a condo or a townhouse, there's still going to be a maintenance fee or an HOA fee or things like this that you're going to be paying. So there's always going to be some level of expense, even in housing for folks that actually own their own house. There's still expenses there that never go away. Of course, there's transportation expenses, food and personal care, and there's entertainment. You'll have more free time, so you might want to do more stuff that has to be budgeted. Chances are if you're like a lot of older folks, you will have more medical related types of expenses, particularly if certain genetic or other types of diseases catch up with you over as you age. That will increase your expenses there. But you might be able to save money in other areas. And that's part of why we start with your current living expenses and how much of that you think you're going to be needing in the future. The rule of thumb is we budget for around 80% of what we currently spend as future. So for example, if you live on $5,000 a month, and that's your expense level right now, well, maybe in retirement, you budget on around a $4,000 a month budget. That's that. One of the things we also have to do is what we talked about last class, estimate your retirement income. That's really, really important to do. And that is going to be, we're going to start with Social Security benefits. We're also going to go to certainly retirement plans, any personal investments that you might have, etc. The book has a worksheet that's available here that indicates, how to estimate your expenses in retirement, how to estimate your income in retirement. It also goes over various things like the cost of living is going to be increasing between now and the time you retire. That's what the inflation factor is there. And then, of course, are there any shortfalls? Are you not, with what you're expecting to come in versus what you need, right, to live? That's a shortfall. And so how are those shortfalls going to be taken care of? Some people go back to work. Some people do they increase the amount of savings they do now so they can have that money in the future, etc. And this is basically where future value comes in, and Appendix B is the future value of an annuity, regular payments into a fund, for example. And you can use that to calculate what you might have, okay? So your book goes over, again, the annual savings, which I just pointed out. You can do that. I want to look at where people are getting money in retirement. The best thing you can do is increase the amount of places you're getting retirement income. Okay. So one thing that you might notice is Social Security is, unfortunately, for people 65 and older, it's the largest source of their income. For a pretty good size number of people, it's their only retirement income. It's a very sad situation, and Social Security doesn't pay very much, as I'll be showing you. Again, some people stay and do some work, whether it's part-time, whether it's full-time, what have you. some people continue to work even though they are quote unquote retired. They're not really retired, they just changed their life, right? Some people have private pensions or government pensions that they rely on. Some people have assets that are generating income. Now, whether that's dividends on stocks or interest on bonds or other types of things, it's all part and parcel for the call. What's a good amount to receive some Social Security? We're going to be looking at that. So Social Security benefits are calculated on the 35 of your highest year's earnings. Okay, because you start paying Social Security as soon as you start working, and so technically, even if you got a job as a teenager, 16, you started working, you're paying Social Security taxes and your employer is matching that. So you're already building up Social Security credits and a tax record. So what they do is they look at and of course, a lot of people are working until they're well into their 60s and 70s, okay? So they look at the 35 highest years, okay, in that period of time. Of course, you're not retired yet, Clark. So when you do fully retire and apply for Social Security benefits, that's when they'll start calculating, and they will look back over your long employment history from the day you started paying taxes to the day you don't want to pay them anymore because you want to retire. The formula is the 35 highest years. And that is the basis for how they calculate your benefit. Okay, how they calculate your benefit. So again, we have a long way to go before that sort of happens. But again, we should know that Social Security is the number one source of income for everybody who's 65 and older. Just let that sink in. Okay. It's such a critical program, so again, how it is, you must, in order to actually get full Social Security benefits, you must have worked for at least 10 years, okay? Or 40 quarters. A quarter is a 3-month period, right? And so that's the basic qualification. You must be paying in for a 10-year. Now, of course, if you started working, even if you're in your 20s, by the time you're in your mid-30s, you've reached your 10-year. So it's not like most people don't qualify. Most people do qualify. 90, I think it's a very high number. 97, 98% of people qualify based on this. So for what you qualify for is different. You have full benefits, which you qualify for full benefits under the law if you retire at 67 or higher. You can retire for partial benefits at 62, but it's not full, it's partial, so it's a lower amount. 67 is you get your full benefit. If you work longer, you max out at age 70. You're basically going to be getting an 8% increase per year for every year after this, 68, 69, 70. That's a 24% increase. Okay, and if you include the year 67, it's a 32% increase because it's literally all of year 67, all of year 68, all of year 69, and all of year 70. You can have up to a 32% increase in your benefit if you simply wait. Okay, but at age 70, that's when Social Security law maxes out your benefits. That's it. They're not going to calculate, So if you become a millionaire and you're 71, no big deal. It's not going to be counting as part of your Social Security benefits. Okay. Of course, if Social Security does come with benefits for surviving spouse, if you're married and you're collecting Social Security and then you die, there is a surviving spouse benefit to Social Security. And there's also a benefit for minor children, for folks who are on Social Security who pass. Then their children are actually entitled to the benefit, or part of the benefit. Okay, and so that's part of the law as well. It's funded through what's called a mandatory tax. Okay, your FICA tax is a mandatory tax. It's, in other words, employers must take it out. You must pay this tax by law. Okay, and there's two parts to the tax. The biggest part, 6.2% of it, is specific to Social Security. Okay, your employer must match that. Okay, so you put 6.2%. That's what you see coming out of your check for your Social Security contribution. Your employer, what you don't see is your employer actually needs to pay that as well on your behalf. That's part of your benefit in the future, but your employer has to pay that. So it's a pretty whopping tax, 12.4% total, just for Social Security. There's an additional 1.45% for Medicare, So that makes the total FICA tax coming out of your check 7.65%, okay? 6.2% is Social Security, 1.45% is Medicare, okay? Medicare is when, this is a US government agency that provides health insurance to everyone who's 65 and older. So we do have universal health care in this country, right? What some folks want to call socialism, socialized medicine. Of course, that's an extreme view of this. But what it is it's just a government program that provides insurance to folks who are 65 and older. It's paid for by people who are working and paying this tax. Okay? So that's how this benefit is provided. The total benefit is Social Security and Medicare. Medicare, you qualify to get it at 65, whether you're still working or not. You can grab Medicare at that point because you're entitled to it by law. Okay, and the only qualification is age, 65. Okay, you don't have to apply for Social Security benefits until you are ready to retire. Again, you can do it as early as 62, but you get a reduced benefit. Your full benefit's at 67, and then you'll get an increased benefit up to 70 years old. But after that, there's nothing. So again, but that's how this is funded. That's how this is funded. And that's important. Now, if you have, if you fully retire this, last year, 2019, and you made the maximum amount, let me just show you one thing here. Social Security taxes are taken out of the first, for last year anyway, the first $132,900 a person makes in that year. So for example, if you are, if you're an executive and you make $265,000 a year, you're paying your Social Security tax the first half of the year. And the other half of the year, that doesn't come out of your check because you've already hit the limit for that year. Okay. For folks that make multi-million-dollar salaries, whether they're football players, basketball players, baseball players, what have you, usually after the first few innings of their first game, they're done paying Social Security tax because they've already made this limit for the year. So all the other monies that they make is not subject to this 6.2%. It is subject to the Medicare tax. That it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how. It doesn't matter how much you make in any given year. you're always paying Medicare tax, and your employer is always matching it. Okay, so that's, so for folks that actually maxed out, and they've maxed out for all 35 years, this is the most they can get per month from Social Security, because the law caps it. There's a maximum benefit to Social Security. There's also a minimum benefit. You can't get more than this. You can't get less than that. So there's a minimum, maximum. In between all of those is basically the very different amounts of money that you've made through the year. Okay. Okay. Yeah, well, that's good. That's good. That's your benefit. That's going to be your benefit. But if you retired, again, if you retired in 2019 and you've made a lot of money all those years, that's the most you can collect. Okay, that's what this is saying. Medicare has several parts to it. One part is, Part A is hospitalization. They cover all of that stuff. But Part B is for all your medical visits and other stuff like that. Part B only covers 80% of all the healthcare, health insurance claims that you have. You got to pay the other 20%. In order to get Part B Medicare, you're going to be paying for it out of your Social Security check. So you're going to be paying for, you're still going to be paying for healthcare even when you get Medicare, because it costs money to provide you with that benefit. Okay, and that's how that works. Okay. All right. So in terms of what the average benefit is, and this is based on 2018 data, although there's actually new data now. You can see that the average benefit for a retired worker was $1,400, and for a retired couple was $2,300. But this is not a lot of money. This is not a lot of money, you know, compared to what it could be. So let me go ahead and show you what the data is today. I'm going to bring you right to the Social Security website. Actually, I'm going to be looking at a couple of charts with you, okay? So hang in there with me. All right, so first is, I need to find two things. Social Security annual report. Okay, that's one of the things I wanted to find. The other thing is the average Social Security benefit for 2020, monthly statistics. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you the statistics currently here. Okay, and I don't know if you can actually see this or not. Very well. Can everyone see this okay? All right. So I want you to follow with me here, because I want you to know that this is the actual average benefit right now. The latest data we have available is the October 2020 report. And what that shows is that the average monthly benefit for a retired worker is now $1,521 a month. Okay, now that's about $18,000 a year. I mean, you're not going to be living high on the hog on 18 grand a year, right? But this is the base pay. Matter of fact, this, for a lot of couples, this is the only amount of money they got coming in retirement. It's super duper sad. It really is sad. When you look at other, you know, there's survivor benefits, there's disability benefits, but this is the average now, 1521. Okay. You might be curious as to whether Social Security will be around for you. Does anyone think it won't be around? Anyone have any opinions on that? Well, let me tell you, it's going to be around, and it's only going to be you who makes it happen. I want you to know that Social Security was created by Congress. Okay, acts of Congress create these types. This is the law. They create laws. So the Social Security Administration has to report annually to Congress. And again, it's under penalties of perjury, so they have to submit this report as accurately as possible. So I want to go over a couple of things from the last report that was provided to Congress, just so you know what's going on. And I want to read this with you so you get a better understanding. And again, feel free to ask any questions. So this is for the total of 2019. So from January till December of 2019. Social Security is called actually the Old Age and Secure Supplemental Disability Income Program, OAS. That's what Social Security stands for there, really. That's the law. In 2019, 64 million people received Social Security benefits from the program. 48 million of the 64 million were retired workers and dependents of those workers. 6 million of the 64 million were survivors of workers who had died. And 10 million of the 64 million were disabled. Okay, so of the 64 million people who got Social Security benefits, that's the breakdown. Now, during the year, okay, 178 million people, that's in 2019, paid into the Social Security fund. They paid taxes from their payroll, okay? I want you to know that the total cost of the program, in other words, all the benefits that were paid for Social Security was, in 2019, was $1,059 billion. Now that looks like a small number until you realize that's $1 trillion, okay? Social Security is a $1 trillion benefit program, okay? However, its income was 1.062 trillion. In other words, there's more tax money coming in than going out for that program. Okay, that's the way it has been since the 1980s. In the middle of the 1980s, Ronald Reagan was president, and the Congress fixed Social Security because it was supposed to be going broke then. They made certain changes, including raising the retirement age, among other types of things. And sure enough, Social Security, the money started pouring into Social Security. And for 30 years, Social Security had more money coming in than they needed to run the program. What happens to the extra money? As you see here, there's some extra money. If you took in $1.062 trillion, but you only needed $1.059 trillion, where'd the other $3 billion go? Well, what it did is the federal government borrows the difference. Okay. And so basically what this means is the federal government has borrowed, this is the total. This is the federal government has borrowed $2,897 billion from the Social Security Trust Fund over the years. What does that mean? $2,897 billion of Social Security has financed the national debt. Because this is how much extra money has come in over the last 30, 35 years than what the program actually needed to function. And Congress basically borrowed the rest. Okay, so the government issued them basically treasury bonds and said, look, we'll borrow this money and we'll pay you later. And that's basically what happened to the Social Security monies that had come in. Okay, so never ever think that, here's my point, never ever think that Social Security is broke. If you had nearly $3 trillion in assets, would you think you were broke? No. No one in their right mind would think they would be broke if they literally had $3 trillion of assets put aside. What's really going on here, and what you keep hearing about, is the national political parties' unwillingness to fix Social Security and fix the overspending that the government's been doing for years. So I know we worry about the fact that the country has somewhere around a $25 trillion national debt. Well, Social Security owns $3 trillion of that national debt. Okay. Most Americans own the national debt in one way, shape, or form. Social Security has $3 trillion of it. The Federal Reserve has a lot. Mutual funds, pension funds, they all have, and individuals all own lots of the national debt. So it's not really a huge deal, but it is when it comes to Social Security, and they're telling you there's no money there. There's money there. And you know how important it is to a lot of people. So don't let them take that away. That's why it's one of the reasons you have to go vote as an informed person, is to make sure that people that we're sending to represent us in Washington are going to do the right thing by the people. These are overwhelmingly, this is going to folks that really need the money. And it's not a lot of money, as you see, with the average benefit, right? So I think that's just a little piece of information I want you to carry forward when you start thinking about Social Security and how important it is. Any questions or comments so far before we're going to go back into our slideshow? Informative? Happy you know? Good. Let's keep going. Okay, can everyone see a slideshow now? Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's go back. Well, pension plans, boy, this has really changed a lot over the years. We still have a lot of pension plans. It's just how they work has changed quite a bit. Okay. Excuse me, traditional pension plans were used to they were set up by employers for workers, and they were totally funded by employers for workers. In other words, the worker didn't have to pay any money out of their pocket or out of their paycheck for their own pension. It was simply a benefit that the employer was providing. Okay. Those pension plans, they're called defined benefit plans. They still exist, but they are significantly less in number than they used to be. Okay. What has increased a lot is something called a defined contribution plan, which, as the word contribution suggests, the employees have to put money aside for their retirement. This is what a 401k plan is. It's a defined contribution plan. Okay. So if the employee doesn't put money in other words, if the employee doesn't contribute, neither does the employer. Okay. That's much different than the traditional defined benefit plan where the employer contributed regardless. One other big issue here is that under traditional, what's called a defined benefit plan, which is totally employer funded, the employer managed everything. The employer managed the investments, the employer managed all the paperwork, and they sent you checks when you retired. That doesn't happen with defined contribution plans. You, the employee, you're responsible to invest your own money in various mutual funds that are offered by the plan. And you're the one who decides how much you're going to take out when you retire. You have all the work to do. That's a huge shift in how we view pensions in this country. That shift started really in the 70s and has gone really accelerated through the 80s, 90s. Now it's just, we just assume it's the way it is. So a defined benefit plan is one of the plans that are, like I was mentioning, is sort of on the wane. It's kind of going down because it's the employer who puts the money aside. And it's the employer who manages the money. And it's the employer who's doing everything. So the employer they do 100% of everything. So they're taking all the risks, and they are responsible for everything that happens there, not the employee. How defined benefit plans usually work for a lot of employers is they'll say, look, for every year you're with us, we're going to put a certain percentage of your pay away in this plan, say 2% a year, okay? And so when you retire, say after 30 years, okay, you would be getting the balance in that. So if you retired after 30 years at 2%, you would be retiring at roughly 60% of your final salary. If your final salary was 50,000 and your pension guaranteed 60% of that, you'd be getting a pension of $30,000 a year. That's basically how they worked. Okay. They don't really, I mean, they still exist, but they're few and far between. They're few and far between. It's not that many. What's common, as I was saying, is the defined contribution plan. This is the 401k type plan, which means you have to put money in, and then the employer will match you a certain percentage. But then you have to decide how it's all going to be invested, and you're making all those decisions. And then when you do retire, you're making a big decision as to how you want to get paid, okay, from that plan. And a lot of people just don't understand how to do that, so they end up losing money in the long run. Okay, so here, if you don't add anything to the plan and you don't invest, you have nothing, which means you have no retirement benefit. So it is really the amount that's in that plan at the when you do retire that becomes your pension. You bear all the risk as an employee because you're doing the investing, so you're doing market risk, and you're taking all the you have to monitor everything. You're also the one that needs to take the distributions out based on that. Some employers actually provide people, their employees, with a cash balance plan, which, like a traditional pension, is fully funded by the employer, okay, and invested for your benefit, okay. However, the pension isn't guaranteed. It's simply based on the balance in that fund when you retire, okay. And that's it. That becomes your pension. The other pension, by the way, the defined benefit plan is mostly it's a lifetime check. That's how most of them are designed, to provide you with a check every month for the rest of your life. That's how most of them are designed. The others are not. Clearly, whatever the balance is, that's what you got. That's it. One of the problems is you need to be employed. Yes, that does happen. And that reduces the obligation to some degree, Arden, when you change from a defined benefit plan to a cash balance plan. One of the things that's really important here is that if you don't enroll in the plan, you're not saving for retirement. Some states have passed mandatory enrollment. You have to actually opt out, but prior to that, in order to participate in a 401k plan, oftentimes you have to be employed at the employer for a period of time, like 6 months or a year, and then you have to start contributing. You have to set up the account through them and contribute. And then they match a certain amount, okay? So basically speaking, that matching is different for every employer, okay? So how it works is this. Let's say that every paycheck, you put $100 of your check into a 401k, and your employer matches 50% of that. So for every $100 you put in, they'll put in 50, okay? But a couple of years goes down and you don't want to work for them anymore. You quit, you leave. Well, all the money you put in, you personally put in to that is yours. Can never be taken. That's your pension plan. You have a choice of either leaving it at your employer, or you can transfer it to the new employer, or you can roll it over into an IRA. It's totally up to you. Unfortunately, not all the money the employer put in is yours. And that's because all plans have what we call a vesting period. And vesting periods can be different. They can be, there could be no vesting period, which means as soon as the employer puts the money in, it's yours. That's not usually how it happens, but there are plans that do that. In some cases, it's incremental, right? Which means the benefit after, say, 3 years for a cliff vesting, after 3 years, then 100% is yours. What if you leave 2 years? Well, then they have a graded schedule. For every year you're with them and they contributed, there's a certain percentage of that money that's yours and a certain percentage of money that's still theirs if you leave. Okay. Most of the time you are fully vested. Every single penny that they put in is fully yours, usually after 6 years. Again, depends on the plan, can be shorter. It's rare that it's longer. And that's because a lot of people they don't stay with employers for a long time anymore. It's not like there's lifetime employment or something like this. A lot of people are switching jobs roughly every 4 to 5 years. And so the vesting periods have gotten shorter to reflect the reality of how the job market and labor market is like. So what's the vesting period in your employer is one of the questions that you have to look at. Congress is doing everything it can to encourage us to save for retirement. And that's because they realize, they see the data. More and more people are living on Social Security as their only retirement income. And that means more and more elderly people are basically poor, very poor. And that's a problem, because we don't want to necessarily be a country that doesn't take care of our elderly in a decent and respectful way. And if a lot of them are living in poverty, then we got a problem. We got a problem as a country, as a society. So there's a lot of supplemental plans, like a 403B and 457s and all these other ones that I'm going to go over with you next time to explain what that is. I want to first show you some information about what the average balance in a 401k is for people. Okay? So I'm going to take you back to the web. What did I do? Chrome. Here we go. Can everyone see that I'm on the web again here? All right. So the average balance in 401k at retirement. Business Insider. That's a pretty good. It's a respectable outfit. So let me go ahead and I'm going to make this a little bit larger to show you the amount that's listed here. Okay. What this shows is that the average 401k balance in 2019, this is an analysis by Vanguard, which is it's a very large mutual fund family. It's a good company, and I think along with Fidelity is highly regarded. Their 401k, the average 401k balance is only $92,000. And that is the average of over 5 million plans. That's a lot of plans to look at. and that's the average. Worse, look at the bottom here. The median balance is 22,000. Median is that number right in the middle. Right. If you list all the numbers from small to large, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the number smack dab in the middle is the median, 22,000. This is supposed to last your entire retirement, even 92,000. How is that going to last 20 years? I don't think it can. I don't think it can. One of the biggest problems with 401k program as the way we look at retirement is that you're really asking everybody, every employee, to be sort of an investment person, pick their own investments, and do well, And that's one of the biggest shortfalls of the 401k system is we're asking people to invest money for their own retirement, and live with the consequences. What we've seen in 30 years since this has really taken off is the consequences have been very dire. That people have not saved enough for retirement, they don't have enough in their pension, they're relying on Social Security more and more and more, and they're going back to work in old age. Or they're downsizing to, mobile homes or some other cheap way of living. That's the sad reality to it. So it's a problem. It's a problem. But you need to be aware of that. It can be overcome. It's not like you point this out for no reason. It can be overcome. Yes, you could do a tiny house. I agree, Clark. That's a kind of a very big thing now, is the tiny house movement. All right. Any other questions?